Guys, today on the Bearded Tog is a very special day. Today we're having a legend on the podcast. She is, I would say that she's the Beyonce of wedding photography and wedding education. She's just like, she's the top. So I won't reveal her name yet, but just wanted to tell you guys a little bit more about Patreon. We still have a few slots left. I know I've been harping on it for a little bit. But if you want to get early access to the podcast episodes, if you want to get some editing tips, if you want to get business advice, that is the place to be. There's a link in the show notes, or you can just go to patreon.com/Adam Mason to support the podcast. I would absolutely love it. But now, this is the time. I'm building this up a lot. I'm trying to make this very epic. We need some epic music. Katelyn James is our photography Katelyn James is our Bearded Tog guest today. I will ask her more questions about this. I'm going to let her talk a little bit more about this, and hopefully I'll ask some questions that'll give you some insight into why she is the Beyonce of wedding photography. And I don't mean that in like she's a diva or anything like that. She's super sweet, and she's a legend. And she's awesome, and now she's got a little girl, and her husband, we're going to ask her a lot about family and how does she balance the family life, and kind of ask her a little bit if she would do anything differently on her way to kind of help us who are kind of still on our journey, what we would do differently. So without any further ado, the Queen, Katelyn James. She's probably going to be upset that we called her the Queen, but I mean in a good way. Anyway, here we go. Katelyn, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
I'm super excited too. It's I've had a few guests on the podcast recently that were at this thing called The Event with Justin and Mary way back, like 3 years ago.
Yes.
And it's kind of fun. It's just kind of being like, hey, I was very new in my business, and I'm still learning things, obviously, but there's like two more people that need to be on the podcast to complete the event circle on the Bearded Tog.
Yes,
so
that is awesome.
You're the next one, so it's everybody's been awesome.
It's bound to happen. You got to create a whole lineup, and then you can mark it off your to-do list. That's great.
Exactly. What's been going on? I know family life is crazy, and you had to push back a filming course recently.
Yes. Well, we have a 7-month-old, which she's just the best thing that ever happened to us. I won't talk about too much because I might get emotional because I just love her. But because of the changes of being a new parent, I mean, it's just hard. You have so much more responsibility. So we have normally in the past, I could film like a 21 module course in a matter of 2 weeks. Like I could just crank out stuff. I've been working on this course for 3 months. So if that tells you anything, but we're still getting stuff done. It's just at a different pace. And the crazy thing is I actually think that because we're doing this in smaller chunks and we're taking more time to film it, this is our most well planned out course that we've ever done. And it's also the most thoroughly outlined, so it flows and makes sense in the best way. So in some ways, I have learned as a mom that, yes, I don't feel like I'm getting as much done, but the stuff I am getting done is 10 times more organized and more well thought through than the stuff in the past. Because in the past, I would just fly through stuff. So anyway, long story short, yes, it's taking me a long time, but I actually think I'm creating a better product because of it. So
that's awesome.
That's exciting. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
I didn't mean to start the episode off with like something you're not doing as well as you wanted to, but I just I know that family life is real for you right now, so and will be for a while.
It's so true. So true.
I know a little bit more of your background and kind of been following you for a few years. And I remember you actually spoke at another event in DC. It was like a CAP meeting or something like that. And a friend of mine was like, hey, Katelyn James is speaking. And I was like, who is that? And I had no idea that, a few years later, it'd just be, the Beyonce of wedding photography.
Oh my gosh. You're so funny. No, that was, what I remember about that, that speaking engagement, which is, I am debating in my mind whether or not I should say this. I remember that speaking engagement because, and I loved speaking there. I loved the topic I was speaking on, but I had been like hardcore working out, and there's a pair of burgundy pants that I blogged about. I'm like, I am going to fit back in these pants. And that night speaking, that was the first time I wore those burgundy pants, and I was so proud of myself. So if that tells you anything about like my current reality, it's like, I'm a new mom. I'd love to fit in those burgundy pants again. That's just like the first thing I thought of when you said that, which is probably sad, but it's just the truth.
Hey, that was a benchmark in your life, and that's a way that you remembered it. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with
Tell me a little bit more. We'll get to your current family life, everything that's kind of been happening this year. But tell me a little bit more about the past, 3 to 4 to 5 years, and just kind of what you've done and kind of how you've transitioned into education, but also how you started.
Sure. So I started in 2008, which sounds crazy because I'm getting close to a decade anniversary. I don't know what we're going to do for a decade anniversary, but I'm pretty sure I need to go on a cruise or something. But last 3 to 4 years have been kind of a roller coaster of changes in our business. So right at 4 to 5 years ago is when Michael joined me full time, and we were scared to death. We were living on his income. He, just in true transparency, he made about $42,000 a year, and we had arranged our lifestyle to live off of that income. He also had benefits with his job. So when he left that job, we lost, benefits included over 50 grand of our normal income. All this pressure fell on my business. So I booked up up to 42 weddings that year, trying to make sure we had enough money. I kind of overcompensated. We were totally fine money-wise, but I was scared to death. So that was a hard year, but also the easiest year, because for the first time in my career, I had a solid business partner. I had someone to actually go to weddings, work alongside me, and my ability to work doubled because I had double the help. So it was good. It was also bad because 42 weddings a year out of 52 weekends, my entire life was wedding photography, and no one is designed to live a life that's just about their job. And totally. when you live a life like that, you start to ache and miss and long for other parts of your life, and you start to resent the thing that's taking you away from your life. I started to resent parts of my business and dread going to weddings because I was so busy. So we recognized that. We started raising prices and limiting bookings, trying to get our life back. We also recognized that the demand for education, it's crazy. The year that I shot the most weddings is also the year that I did the most educational traveling, speaking, course creation. That wasn't 4 years ago, but I started thinking about it, dreaming of it. I was blogging 5 days a week. And I look back and I'm like, that was the hustle season. That was the season that almost killed me, but it was just a season. And I think the Lord intended that season for a short period of time. After that season, we started to slow down a little bit, went down to 36 weddings instead of 42. And we started to teach, started to do more workshops. We were also trying to sell a house, trying to build a new house so we could host workshops and not get in trouble by the HOA, all these things. And we've kind of landed at a place now where, kind of like what I said before, becoming a parent has reminded me that I can still be a great wedding photographer and only shoot 14 weddings a year instead of 36. And I can still be an educator and launch 1 new course a year instead of 3. And so I'm learning the value of slowing down, doing things really, really well, and not being overwhelmed and comparing myself to what I've call lovingly the old Katelyn. There's a lot of things that the old Katelyn used to do that weren't healthy, and I'm learning that now. So that's kind of been the progression over the last 3 years, is going from crazy busy to slowly getting rid of things we didn't necessarily have to do. And what's crazy is I thought I did a good job of slowing down, but I think God had different plans for me, because in January of this past year, He literally made it so I could not work at all. I had a really rare tumor pop up in my hand, in my knuckle of my trigger finger. So the finger that makes all the money was literally, there was a chance I would lose that finger. We talked about amputation. It was really bad. I was 9 months pregnant when all this was happening, literally could not even type because I was in so much pain. And so for 2 to 3 months, I could not work. And that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me because it taught me how my business cannot be my whole life. So I am in a much different season than I've ever been in my entire life. And it's really good. It's healthy.
You're so happy right now. You're just like, yes.
Yeah. Now, well, I'm glad I'm not pregnant and going into surgery and having a hand tumor, but I'm also thankful for what I learned in that season. It was, I only would have learned it through something that crazy happening to me.
Yeah. It's so, I feel like it's unfortunate. And so it's something that I think on this podcast we're trying to talk about, and we have a few different people, but something, that I think all of us recognize is we only learn the lessons kind of the hard way. I think folks who are going to like be prone to grind and have that hustle. And in that moment, something I'm learning is that you never feel like you have enough or make enough. And it's not even a greed thing. It's just a kind of like when you said that Michael didn't have his job anymore. It's kind of like hey, I got to keep above water, if you will. It's like this ever growing feeling. Right. But the reality is that like your priorities can shift so quickly, even just with that surgery and stuff like that. So that's some good insight. And hopefully people will learn to like, hey, like you should refocus right now. Just take a look at everything and make sure.
Yes.
Pick your priorities.
Because if you don't refocus right now, something crazy may happen to you that makes you refocus.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's crazy. I heard a photographer that we're going to have on in a few weeks. His name is Jason Crocker. And he kind of had the situation, like he's similar to you, I would say, during the grind season, and myself and others who are kind of in that 30 to 40 wedding range and just loving it and, just enjoy making money, but also having happy clients and living life.
Right.
And I think he's a single guy, so he's got a little bit more freedom.
Sure.
And he just playing basketball one morning, I think tore his ACL or broke his knee or something like that. And didn't have disability insurance or anything like that. And things that I never even knew about. This is why we're having him on. And he had to pay out of pocket hiring other wedding photographers to cover for him.
Right. Yeah. Which is so scary. Yeah. We got disability insurance a couple years ago. Just so it's before we were thinking about, trying to get pregnant. And I was like, it's a lot of pressure on me. Like if something happens to me and I can't show up, that's our livelihood. And so now I know, like, okay, if I get in a car accident, if I break my leg, kind of like he did, I know that I have a set amount of money that will come in. But the crazy thing is most disability insurance policies, you only have 3 months. You have 3 months of nothing until they will actually start doing a payout. So, yeah, let's just hope nothing happens to anybody because it's so bad.
That's terrifying. Oh my gosh.
I know, but it is worth it to have a backup plan. But like you said, like it's all on us. Like we don't have programs within a corporation that we're working for that will support us. We have to create our own support. We have to create our own salaries, and our ideas and our hard work, what we decide to do every day, that determines how much money we make. And when you think about it too much, you can get overwhelmed by it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a photographer I know who said he's only making money when he's pressing the button. And like, as much as we wish we could get paid for everything else we do in our business, it's that 5% of what we do every week that brings in the cash. Right. Awesome. I appreciate everything you just said. This is really good balance. And I think we kind of wanted to talk about like having a heavy workload and then also kind of, and I love that you've already touched on like a little bit of disability insurance and job stuff. And the more boring, the better, because those are the things that nobody talks about. And I think it's really good. But I want to talk about now more of a fun thing is, how did your personal life impact your work life 7 months ago?
Right. So how do my
I think she's 7 months or 8 months.
Yes. No, she is. She's 7 months. She's almost 8 months. And so, pre-baby, really, I don't know what part of our life hasn't changed. And I think for me, when I was kind of I don't know what your age range is, but I know you just got married in April. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Yes, I saw some wedding pictures. They were beautiful. But I think looking back when we first got married and leading into a few years of in the newlywed phase, and then, now 6 years into marriage and we have a baby. I just think that the things that I was so stressed out and consumed with, they still matter to me. But it's just different now. There's a new purpose in our life that trumps everything else. And so because of that, the pressure of some of those other things is much easier to write off as, you know what, Katelyn, don't freak out over that. And if my husband heard me say that, he would be laughing hysterically because he knows that I freak out about a lot of things. And I tend to get really anxious about business growth and, am I thinking of good ideas? I don't know if I am still the same creative person I used to be, and all the things that new moms kind of worry about. Like, am I still the old Katelyn, the new Katelyn? I don't know. But I think our personal life and the way that our life has changed in regards to our business. I remember after Evie was born, I remember thinking to myself, I have to reinvent myself. I am not the same person. This is going to be a new season for me, and I've got to figure out what people want to hear from me. And I would say for a couple months, I was so worried about trying to maintain my place in the industry, whatever the heck that means, which the whole Beyonce comment is very sweet. But when you're like, you just had a baby, you're trying to figure out, like, do you even want to do work anymore? Because your hormones are all over the place. You're just emotional about everything. I was so worried about trying to figure out what I could say or what I could post or what I could do to make people realize I can still teach them. I can still educate them. I'm still a great wedding photographer. You should still book me. And the answer to all of my fears and worrying about that season, the answer was that I just needed to be honest and share about my life, because I had built up a personal brand for almost a decade. And so people weren't looking for me to be this superhero that cranked out my workflow like I used to. It's amazing. When I just sat down and started being honest about how hard the season of life had been, I connected with more people than I ever connected with when I was trying to just give people what I thought they wanted to hear. And I think for me, it just shows like I have a genuine brand, and I think you have to be careful with that, because sometimes when people say I have a genuine brand, they can push their brand in a way where they're highlighting and over exaggerating the normal parts of their life to make sure more people get attracted to them. And I don't want to do that. But I want to be genuine about what's going on in my life, in hopes that I can encourage other photographers and other women and other business owners, that wherever they are in their season of life, it's okay. And people have asked me like, oh, as your personal life has changed, could you start sharing your tips for being a mom? I'm like, no, I'm not going to share tips on being a mom, because I've only been a mom for 7 months. I don't have any tips. I need you to tell me tips. That's what I need. So my personal life changed, and it dramatically impacted my business and what I felt like I had to offer. So anyway, so that's kind of what the baby thing did to me as an educator and as someone who has a presence on social media and has a platform with a purpose. Everything changed. So babies change everything for the better. I wish if I had known, and this is great maybe to hear for anybody who's in business, loving it and thinking about like, I don't want to have kids. If I had known how much I love being a mom, I would have had a baby like 3-4 years ago, if God allowed us to.
Sure.
I put it off out of fear, a lot of different fears. And now I look back and I'm like, gosh, all those fears, I don't even think about them anymore. So anyway, Adam, I don't know if you can tell, but I am long-winded. My dad's a preacher and I just talk nonstop. I'm so sorry.
No, I support it. It's totally fine. I grew up in church, and I think that these are the things that, this is kind of the form of the podcast. Like our shortest episode is half an hour and our longest is over an hour. It's, this is what I wanted for people when we came up with this. It's just people being real beyond being real. It's and my next question is kind of even, it's not necessarily like a fun, authentic question. It's more of like, oh yeah, we messed that up kind of question, or,
sure.
But I think it's, you again, just kind of like the lessons we learned, like Evie is a positive lesson, in
Yes.
the personal life that affects our business life. And it's like, oh, you didn't know that you would just have so much joy and all this attention that you put on something you love, your business. You could give a large portion of that to Evie, and
Right.
just that relationship, and
Yes.
how that family dynamic, if you will. And I mean, because you've shared that, and people. We always think, like, even yourself, even being the Beyonce, which is so funny to say, like, there are people who even email me, and I feel like I would say, like, I'm a middle class photographer. That's what I tell people.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm
No,
just,
you're awesome. You're awesome. I've seen your work. You're great.
we're just making it work. We're doing it. We have a good, like, solid business, and we're trying to get into education and other things. But, there are folks that are, there's people that are following us that we never know, that,
Sure.
are quiet until something piques their interest. And
Right.
for you, maybe that was moms, right? Yes. You never knew that you had all these moms following you, or maybe they grew with you. You had a lot
Sure.
of women in the industry that loved you, and
Right.
women, unfortunately, are the only, not unfortunately, but like men can't get pregnant, and so at least not
Right.
yet. And so it's just like,
Right.
hey, that's kind of a default audience right there. And
Yes.
and it's good for them to even see that. And I think resources like this and your emails and you showing more of Evie, because I think a lot of moms in the industry would be like not as prone to show their
Sure.
kid, and a lot of them don't show their personal life as much as you guys anyway. But it's such a relational thing, and people feel so much more at ease. And I mean, for me, like, we have never met in person. I mean, I've seen you in person 2 or 3 times, and I've talked to Michael before, ironically, about
Yes.
about Apple products.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
In person. I feel like husbands, like Matt Springman, Abby Grace's husband, and
Yes.
and Michael. I saw them at the event like 2 or 3 years ago,
Yes.
and I just went up to them and I was like, "Hey guys, nobody's talking to you. How are you doing?" Like,
How you doing? Yeah, you're in the back here, and your wives are up there with all these women.
Yeah.
You should have your own clique, like your own little club back there.
right. We should have like a guys happy hour or retreat after every photography event.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just like 7 of us, but yeah.
True.
And it's like, I think you just have the audience there for you, if you will, and they're watching you, and they know what's going on, and they get to grow with you guys.
Yes.
Which I think is really cool. And I think there's so many questions that you've probably answered before that I want to ask, but I want to talk kind of in the transition, either in surgery or the potential surgery, and then also with Evie. Is there anything, like, what helped you guys kind of just make through that business transition? Did you have to reschedule any weddings or anything like that? Or even, like I said, even more practical, like the boring the better, like maybe it's insurance, or, hey, did you have to reset up a savings account or time something around a course? Like, tell me a little bit more about how you prepared, or maybe how you wish you prepared in hindsight.
Right. That's a great question. And I think the first thing that came to mind, and it's funny you brought up Abby Grace. She's a dear friend of mine, and she actually reached out to me. This was right before Evie was born, and but after my surgery, I think. I can't remember exactly. It was like a crazy season, but she reached out and she's like, hey, I know you're not blogging as much, but I also know that, you have been blogging regularly for 8 years, and just stopping all of a sudden is probably not what you want. So could I organize some guest posts for you, so some of your friends can put content on your blog for you, just to help put your mind at ease that you are providing things to your audience. And that was one of the sweetest things that anyone could have ever done for me. And I have thanked her so much, but I don't think I can ever thank her enough for doing that, because as a business owner, she gets it, and she knows me personally. She knows that is a stress for me. And so I don't remember exactly how many friends she organized to get content sent to me, but there are probably 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 guest posts on my blog during that season. That was just the greatest gift. I mean, people could have sent us flowers every day for a month, but nothing would have meant as much as someone organizing guest blog posts for me.
Yeah.
And Abby Abby saw the need and she stepped up as just a sweet friend. And I am so grateful for her and for that. So that was a huge help.
I love that. I was just going to say something really quick and you mentioned it, is something business owners don't want to lose. And I think this is why we wanted to have you on for this particular subject is
Sure.
we feel this momentum or this inertia. And that is like what we don't want to give up. And having a business owner step in and say, hey, we're going to keep things going for you if we can in any way we can.
Right.
And it's not like even if Abby was not a photographer and maybe she was just a marketer who was a friend, like she would get that. She'd be like, hey, Katelyn loves content and we need to, help her out in that way.
Help her.
Yeah. It's just that momentum is what we feel is so valuable. So if other photographers see a friend going through something and want to help out, maybe taking on some of that momentum would be a good avenue for them. And just something we wouldn't think of. Like flowers are awesome. And but I know both of us, we're thinking about our business a lot. Like that's, our business is going to be the last thing to be taken care of in a personal crisis. And
sure,
having them.
Well, and like it doesn't even have to be guest posts. I was thinking like, gosh, if you just went to a friend who's like going through surgery or going through something where like they just cannot be present on social media, like having a friend plan out a portfolio Instagram post a day with specific hashtags to move them forward and make sure they're still present, even if everyone knows that someone is guest posting for them. I mean, who cares? It's still content, and it's really, it shows the community that you're a part of. And so that's a great point. It was a huge gift to us. I know that would be a huge gift for other people who are going through unexpected trials in their life. And so I'm very, very thankful for her and for that. And I, thinking about other things, like you mentioned, disability insurance, we thankfully never had to use that. It was in January. We did not have to cancel a wedding because of my hand tumor or the surgery. We did cancel one wedding because it was like 6 weeks after the baby was born, and I didn't know what delivery was going to look like. I didn't know if I was going to have a C-section. And this wedding was actually out of the country, and it was in a country where there was Zika. So going to that country, if I got bit and got Zika, which is highly unlikely, but it is a possibility. And as a first-time mom, I kind of freaked out about it. I wouldn't be able to nurse my baby. It was just a big risk. So 6 weeks postpartum, I'd have to leave a 6-week-old, go to a different country. And someone told me, I don't remember who it was, someone told me that wasn't a good idea, who already had a baby. And then my mom sat me down. I was like, KK? My whole family calls me KK. I don't know why, but they do. But they're like, KK. She's like, KK, you have never been a mama, but I'm going to tell you right now, you are not going to, you're thinking right now about how fun a destination wedding would be. But when you have a baby of your own, you're not going to want to leave that little girl at home. You're going to bawl your eyes out the whole time you're on that plane. And I don't think it's smart. And she was so right. When we had that, Evie was 8 weeks old actually when the wedding came. And 7, I think, I can't remember exactly. But anyway, she was tiny. And I remember thinking, Michael, can you imagine getting on a plane right now, leaving the country and leaving her at home at 8 weeks old? I cannot imagine. I'm so glad people told me not to do that. So that was one wedding we had to lose. And we only talked about using disability insurance when we were under the impression that if the tumor had eaten away too much of the bone in my knuckle, like too much to recreate and grow new bone, if your knuckle's not there, the rest of your finger is going to cease to exist and thrive. So we had to honestly know, like, okay, they could go in, the tumor could be cancerous, it could be a lot worse than the MRI showed. And if we can't repair it with bone graft and regrow that bone, if there's not enough there, then you got to be okay with amputation. And it's not just amputation of your finger, it'd be the entire knuckle joint. So a large portion of my hand would be gone. And so, people were reaching out and they're like, hey, I have a friend who's missing a finger. It's really not that noticeable. You'll get used to it. I'm like, y'all have no idea.
What a conversation.
It was crazy. What a conversation. Yeah. People were trying to be encouraging, and it was encouraging to know, like, I will survive this. It's not the end of the world. I will have a crazy story, but I'll also look a little different for the rest of my life. And that's going to be part of my story. So thankfully, the surgeon came back in the OR. I was awake during the entire surgery. I heard everything, didn't feel pain, but I felt the drilling. Sorry, that's probably too much information.
It's all good.
So I felt everything. I couldn't go under anesthesia because I was literally about to have a baby in 3 weeks, and it was too risky. So the doctor came in the OR and he's like, good news. you don't have cancer. Actually, crazier news, the aggressive tumor that you had that like ate away half of your knuckle in the last couple of weeks is completely dead. And I don't know why. And to me, I'm thinking, I had thousands of people praying for me. That is why.
Yeah.
And so I look back now and I'm like, we never had to use disability insurance. We never had to cancel anything but one wedding. And that wasn't even because of the tumor. The worst thing, honestly, the hardest thing was the anxiety that I built up in my mind about the what ifs. And, I can't show up for people the way I used to. And people are going to think that my business is dying. But, the truth about my business is I've been so consistent and I've shown up so regularly for so long that I can survive 3 months of not doing anything. And yes, our bookings slowed down drastically, and we had to spend the last 6 months working back up to get a fully booked calendar for 2018. Things did slow down, but my business is fine. And I wish that I had trusted the hard work that I'd done in the past, that it would carry me through a few months of struggle, because it did, and it was fine. So
totally. What was the process of canceling that wedding? And you can share as much as you want it or don't want to. Is
Sure.
that, and I know that was probably a positive thing, right? You obviously felt bad that you couldn't perform this awesome destination wedding. It's like the battle of two things that are great. And, Evie's going to win out in that particular one.
Right. Right.
So if you can just kind of share maybe a little bit more about that practical process, how did you kind of craft your email or your phone call, or how'd you go through that?
So I emailed the bride, and that was just because our relationship had been email based. This bride was a unique situation. She had actually booked 2 or 3 years ago and then had to postpone her wedding. And oddly enough, she actually had a baby of her own. So right when I was emailing her, she had just walked through what I was fearful about walking through with her wedding. So basically she was in the healing process. She had a newborn baby, knowing she's going to have a wedding in like 8 months. And so when I emailed her, I think we actually just launched KJ email templates, which is really exciting. We've had so many people ask us for our email templates for 9 years. I'm like, Michael, we need to just do this. We need to just make them available. So we made. I
have them, so yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
And I already have
you.
my own emails, but it's always good. Like as a business owner and anybody listening, if we're just being real, like I have Abby's, I have yours, I have a few others, because I think like the price is right, and it's always good to just learn, and it's always good to just look at them and say, okay, that's a really good insight. I think for me, it's never like, hey, I need all 13 of these emails. It's like, what is this one that she's going to craft really, really well, and also the photographer you purchase it from. That's why I think like everybody could sell their own, because it's going to be a different style of communication.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
I need to come up with mine. I'm just kidding.
No, you totally do. I mean, honestly, I think, from an education perspective, there needs to be more male resources, because
come on, Katelyn, let's preach.
Yes. Because when you think about it, the way that I handle, so my emails come with the email templates, but then they come with like 10 sticky situations, like how I would handle these. And they are written in my voice. And so for you, you are handling situations in a way that works for you, but there's not a lot of people, even Jordan and Amy, Amy does a lot of the writing as well. And Jordan is an amazing writer. Not that men are not amazing writers, but I wouldn't say that he is super normal in his gift there. He has a special gift that not most men don't have. And I think that there is a little bit of a lack of resources for guys that don't have a wife in the business with them, because they can't just copy my bridal guide and use my words, because it's not going to sound right at all.
Absolutely.
Whereas a 20-something female photographer could totally take my whole bridal magazine and copy it and use it as, on her own. And she could do that in a day or so. Whereas if you have it, you're going to have to rewrite some stuff, because it doesn't sound like you. So anyway, all that to say, this email with this bride for this destination wedding, trying to cancel the wedding. I always say, and in my sticky situations guide, I explain this, that when you have to do something hard and you have to persuade your clients that it's the right decision, you have to make it about them. So I didn't focus too much on hey, I'm really scared to leave my baby, or
Right.
hey, I really am worried about how I'm healing. I don't know what my delivery is going to, you can't make it about you. Everything has to be about her. And so the entire email was worded and crafted in a way to where I wrote it out to say, I don't know what's going to happen with my delivery process. All I know is you are only going to get married once, and you're getting married in the most amazing place. It's out of the country. You deserve a photographer that is going to have zero limitations on time, on, not worried about Zika,
Right.
not worried about a baby at home. You deserve the best. And I am worried that I can't be the best for you, and you deserve more than that. And so I've actually found other photographers that I trust, that I love, that I've actually educated myself, and I'd love to refer you to them. And you know what's so cool, Adam, is I was really worried about that wedding, but one of my sweet friends and one of the sweetest KJ brides of all time, Amanda Hedgepeth, she got to shoot that wedding with her husband, and she got to go on a trip with just him a few months after they had a horrible car accident. And I remember seeing her going away with him. And I know, destination weddings can be stressful, but she rocked that wedding. She did an amazing job. The client was super sweet and they were a good fit. And it was a huge gift to her. So listening to my gut and handing over a wedding that I was nervous about, that I probably shouldn't shoot, ended up being a huge blessing for another friend of mine. So my bride, she did mention in her email that she was disappointed, which, if she doesn't say she's disappointed, I'd be a little disappointed.
Right,
I hope that she's sad that we can't work together. So, but I did have to remind myself, don't think about it too much, Katelyn. She's not saying she's mad at you. She's not trying to sue you. She literally is just sad that she doesn't get to work with Katelyn James. And I am honored that she felt that way, but she handled it so gracefully and understood. And I think the other thing to pay attention to is that I made sure that I didn't just say, hey, here's this person, go email them.
Right.
I had already contacted them and already explained the budget, with these other photographers, and said, hey, this is what we were working with. So this bride needs something comparable or less than what we had already budgeted with her. I've already given her all of her money back, even her deposit, obviously.
Yeah.
And it worked out well. So
right. It's kind of like almost letting the client know. I heard from another photographer named Cliff Montner who couldn't make a session, or he needed to cancel a session because of something with his kids or something like that. Pretty, not even a bad situation. Hey, my kids had a rescheduled soccer game and I want to go. And because he said the specific thing about him, the clients were almost not as supportive as if he had said, hey, my mind's going to be in a different place, or hey, if he just said a harder no to them. And I think for you, just it's something I see in all your emails is kind of letting you kind of educate so that the bride and groom can feel what they're supposed to feel, essentially. And the reality is that you weren't going to be present during that wedding, as skilled as you are at being present, as you're I could do it. Your heart is somewhere else, at that time, and that's without all the that's without all of the practical stuff, Zika and motherhood and stuff. And it's and if you're not present, then you're not going to serve them in the way that you've been setting your expectations for, over time.
Right.
And it's
exactly.
And you're just you have to just kind of prepare them for that. So that's really good. And it's funny too that we always have those emails, and it's good that we're proactive about them. The proactive emails usually always get a good faith email, received, if you will. You're oh, you get worried about it. And then you're oh, it's actually it's not going to be that bad.
Exactly.
That's really funny.
Exactly. You get so worked up about it. And then you're oh, it's over. Oh, that wasn't that
bad. Just kind of keep sticking to practical a little bit. Are there anything, whether, and this can be super boring, but whether it is your savings and checking accounts or just all of your insurance and stuff like that, what did that look like as a business to add Evie onto that? Did that affect your expense too much, or do you have a lot of savings just in case for situations like this, or situations where I know some photographers wouldn't be able to give their deposit back, or at least they wouldn't, it would hurt. So can you talk a little bit more about how you've kind of prepared for situations like that, and situations, adding a new family member?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Or even a dog. I mean, Boca costs money too.
Oh my gosh. Yes, he does. His breath smells awful. And we're like, oh my gosh, we got to get his teeth cleaned. Then we're like, $500 for teeth cleaning? We got to find a new veterinarian. This is awful. So
Katelyn,
for those of you, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'll drive to Richmond for $500 and clean Boga's teeth for you. I'll look at some YouTube videos. I'm ready to learn. Let's do this.
You probably would do a better job than the vet would. We actually, just side note, this is such a random tangent, but there's this gel you can get at PetSmart for like $15 that does wonders on it. You just have to put it on every night. Anyway, so we saved $500 there. So with adding Evie, taking on, this whole new idea of parenthood and having to cancel a wedding, the first thing I thought was, Michael used to speak at Creative at Heart conferences about being financially fit. And Dave Ramsey, we're huge Dave Ramsey fans. And the reason for that is because we believe that families without debt are families that are free. And so we are working really hard to pay down our mortgage quickly. We don't have credit card debt. We even though I walk into the loft and I try to buy all these clothes and they're like, oh, if you open up a credit card, you save 20%. And I'm like, oh, well, I need to save 20%. I always say no because we have one personal credit card. Anyway, we don't have debt and we're trying our best to get rid of our mortgage debt as fast as possible. I mean, it's going to take years and years and years, but I want to be at a place where financially I don't owe anything to anybody.
Right.
And I know people struggle with student loans, but there's so many resources with Dave Ramsey where you can work through the struggles financially that our generation is just overwhelmed by. And one thing that Michael used to teach is that, when we first started our business, we made it a goal to always have an emergency fund. So always have a pocket of money set aside in case of emergency. And I tell this story all the time that I made a huge mistake with taxes in 2013, maybe 12. It was a $10,000 mistake. I basically didn't pay sales tax because someone in a Facebook group told me I didn't have to. And then my CPA was like, no, you do. And you need to pay all your penalties for the last year and a half, or else I can't work with you because you're a liability to me. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I had to backtrack and pay $10,000 worth of taxes and fines. And thank the Lord, I had about $13,000 saved up in an emergency fund. Or else, if I hadn't have done that, my business would be no more. There would be no Katelyn James Photography because I would have just run myself dry. I would have been, as a business, I would have been bankrupt. Right. So setting aside an emergency fund is really important. And then some other things, financially for us with Evie and this change of seasons, I think for us, there's a difference between the money you need and the money that you want. And, in the season of my surgery and we weren't launching anything. And also we should clarify this. We have 2 employees. So my sister works full time as a salary employee, and so does my mom. And this year, starting January 1st, which, just pack on the pressure, we switched to a group health insurance plan. So my business, the corporation of Katelyn James Photography now provides a health insurance policy, a group plan for my immediate family, wow, which is crazy. But also a huge monetary risk, it's another one of those things you can lay in bed at night and be like, if I don't come up with new ideas, my brother, my parents, my sister, her husband, none of them are going to have health insurance. That's not a healthy way to live. And I'm trying to work on that. But, so all that to say, our financial needs every month, we have to pay 4 salaries and we have to pay for group health insurance. What we need every month is pretty high.
Yeah.
And we were in our dead season. We weren't launching new products. We weren't promoting anything because I was just so focused on getting this baby out and dealing with a hand tumor. Michael had to sit me down on multiple occasions and say, Katelyn, we have saved for moments like this. Like emergency funds exist for when random tumors pop up in people's hands.
Right.
This is when you get to just focus on making yourself get better, focus on becoming a mom, and know that we're just going to use our emergency fund and it's going to be okay.
Right.
And it was totally okay. I think I live on the end of the spectrum where I always think, well, there's just not enough. We can't spend anything. We don't have enough money. And And that is a lie that we believe. That's a lie that I believe. And you gotta find a good balance, because you don't want to freak out about money because it'll steal your joy.
Right.
But you also don't want to be reckless and buy. I mean, here I am, an educator, saying this. You can't buy every single course that comes your way.
Exactly.
I had a photographer come to a workshop recently, super sweet girl, but she has bought every single course offering that comes into her inbox, to the point where she has no profit in her business, nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you got to be smart with your money. You cannot spend and spend to be irresponsible, but you also can't freak out and lose your joy about finances. So Evie has created a happy medium for us. I think we've gotten a lot more balanced in the way that I view money now, because I'm not a workaholic like I used to be, but I also am aware of what we need each month and how much excess we would like to create for other big dreams in the future.
Right.
And we move forward from there. So I don't know if that answered your question. Hopefully it did.
No, absolutely. No, I think it was super good. And I'm glad that you talked about just having like an emergency fund, or something I've been working on the past year or so, especially pre wedding life, pre my own wedding. It's just having 6 months of income saved up,
Yes. Yeah.
And both, for me, we're trying really hard to have a Mason photography 6 months, but then also a just personal, between my wife and I, 6 months. And
yes, smart.
The two reasons for that is, for anybody listening, is, the Mason photography one is for those dry seasons, if you will. It's for, equipment failure, malfunction, things we're not planning for. It's, if something bad did happen and I needed somebody to cover a wedding, it's kind of like an emergency fund for the business.
Sure.
And also, if taxes, we save for that, but if it's not as predictable maybe, or something happens, and like you weren't planning on, paying that 10 grand back in the day.
Oh my gosh, no.
But then on the personal one, like if my wife goes through a job transition, or, if in DC our rent goes up like every month, so
oh my gosh,
DC is insane.
Yes.
I bet your mortgage is the same as our rent.
Oh, you honestly, I bet you it is. That's crazy as it sounds. I bet it is.
And so, that's really good for that. And also, as far as like our health there, or any personal things there, or if we did own a home, that could also be kind of that, repairs and stuff like that. So,
sure.
So it's like,
it's awesome.
Yeah, we're working towards that. Just a few fun, hopefully, not that you're being long-winded. I just want to get these questions in before you go.
I know. No, you can totally say I'm long-winded, because I am. No, I know I am.
It's all good. Hey, you just have a lot more breath than everybody else. That's okay. These are kind of more fun and kind of light questions. Now, or even before, having a daughter or being a mom, if you will, how do you usually schedule, or how do you not schedule your days? And you can give that in big chunks or small chunks, whatever you like. What day off is for you, other than Sunday? Yes. I know you probably take Sundays off. Yeah,
we try to. That is really hard, because every month she changes. So every month I'm like, oh, I totally got this schedule down. She's taking 2 naps a day for 2 hours. And then next month it's like, why isn't my baby sleeping anymore? So I would say in this season of life, particularly, we are having to be really strategic about asking our moms to come down. And I know not everyone has that option. But for us, I have to block out, like, for example, today, I knew that I was doing this recording with you. I know that tomorrow we're doing a recording for the course, and I need to work on some of that content today. And so Michael's mom is here helping with Evie today, having some, Evie and Grammy time. And I am in my office, and I got to close my door so I can't hear her cry, and I won't run upstairs to check on her. I just have to be committed to time chunks where I'm not in mom mode. And that's hard. I mean, a couple of days ago, I was having another work day, and Evie was doing fun things in the other room, and I could hear her, and I'm like, oh, I just want to be in there with her. And it's hard to balance that. And so I think right now what works, and this will probably change in the future, but what works right now is looking a week in advance and being like, this day and this day, I need like 2 to 3 hours. Some days that's our mom's helping. Other days, Michael will take her out to run errands for 2 to 3 hours. And I just have time at home in the office with no distractions. And I work a lot more efficiently because I only have 2 to 3 hours instead of all day and, all hours of the night that I used to stay up and work. Another thing I think that works well for us, and I know that I'm speaking from a mom perspective. I used to I could make my own hours whenever I wanted to because I didn't have anything tying me down. But now I think when she goes to bed at like 8:30, I know from like 8:30 to 9:30, I could sit down and get some serious work done in that hour. And I kind of make it an hour because I know that after that hour, I could keep working. But I also know that you're supposed to sleep when the baby sleeps. Like she might pop up and be awake at 1 a.m. We haven't even talked about this, which is crazy, but she has hip dysplasia. So she is in a hip brace that she wears, 23 hours a day. She sleeps in it. So she doesn't have a normal life as a baby, really. She can't move her legs the same way.
Right.
She doesn't sleep as well right now. So because of that, I know like, okay, I can't stay up all hours of the night and work because she's going to get up at 1 a.m. and then I'm going to not sleep at all week if I do that. So 1 hour after bedtime, it's like crunch time to get maybe the inbox clear. Maybe it's to edit that engagement session, get the blog post ready. That's another kind of tool that I use is just knowing she's down for bed. I have an hour of work and then I got to go to bed. So, and that makes it sound like I go to bed at 9:30, but that's a joke. We all know I don't go to bed at 9:30. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of how I'm balancing some life stuff.
No, I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. And for anybody, who needs a visual of Evie that isn't following you on Instagram, which I feel like just like Beyonce, there's nobody that shouldn't be following you.
You're so funny.
It looks like Evie is almost doing a split, like in her brace, like all the time.
Yes,
but it actually is really cute. Like if you didn't know, you just think like, wow, she's really flexible.
Exactly.
So it is.
She does great. She is so good with that brace. She doesn't complain. She's fine. It's just, it's another hurdle we have to jump over.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. Is that a leg joke or something? I don't know. Sorry.
I know. Yeah. No pun intended.
Awesome. One last thing, Katelyn, before we get you out of here, we'll have to have you come back on because there's just so much goodness here.
I know.
This is extra fun. So are you guys watching any TV? And if so, what show are you watching? If you even have time for that. Are you reading any book? And then what are your goals for the rest of the year?
Oh gosh. Okay. So
sorry.
I will say I can answer the TV one really quickly because we actually watch way less TV than we did before baby. But This Is Us, the show This Is Us is so good. And it is our favorite. Like I love Randall. I just love that show so much. It's so real. I bawl every episode, even the episodes that aren't super dramatic, I still cry. So we love that show. We actually just watched the second episode of the season last night. It was great. What was the second thing?
Any books?
TV shows?
Any books you're reading?
Books. Yeah. Oh, that is a great question. I admit that I'm not the best reader, but I'm trying to be better about that. And I'm reading Entre Leadership by Dave Ramsey. Is something that I've had on my nightstand for probably a year, and I'm trying to work through it.
I totally understand.
Yes. I'm also working through, there's a book that teaches you how to pray for your kids and how to pray for your baby and awesome. Just how to be present in our life. And so I'm reading that too. So also, though, I think a lot of my time, I am a big believer in journaling. Been journaling since high school. And if you ever want to look back at like how faithful God's been in your life, you look back and read some things about what you were freaking out about 5 years ago. And you're like, oh my gosh, I was ridiculous. So a lot of my time that I have in the morning or just free time to be reading, a lot of times I default to journaling. So
that's cool.
And then goals for the year. Goals for the year is to launch our lighting and locations course in November and to do a really good job. And then we actually I'm trying to decide if I should say this.
No worries.
I have an idea of something I'm really excited about, and I'm working through how to make it a reality. So let's just leave it at that.
Nice.
And that will hopefully be something that is announced in 2018. And if something doesn't happen or come of it, you'd be like, oh, poor Katelyn, she didn't get her idea off the ground. But I have this good idea. I'm super excited. My team's working on it. We're working on it. And I really hope people are as excited about it as I am. So anyway, that is super vague, but hopefully it gets people excited about something new.
No, I love it. And just to make you feel better, I picked up a book before our honeymoon and I was like, oh, I'll read this on the honeymoon. And I just now finished that book and it's been 7 months. So
that makes me feel better, way better.
You're totally fine. And there's a girl, I'll have to send it to you. Her name is Sammy Harvey. She's really cool and creative. She kind of wrote this blog post, and it's like permission for book readers. And it's like, if you don't like it, put it down, which I'm one of those people that I want to finish things. I want to commit to things. And it's like, Adam, this is an inanimate object. You don't have to commit to it.
Exactly. That's so good.
Yeah. Because like if you pick up a book that you're pumped about, you'll roast through that book. You'll just go right through it.
Right.
Awesome.
That is so funny.
Other question related to This Is Us before I let you go. Have you ever seen the movie Crash? Have you and Michael seen Crash yet?
Oh, Michael has. I have not.
Yeah.
Should I watch it?
You should. It's very similar. I mean, it's a few years old, but it's very similar to This Is Us as far as just kind of a different perspective. And,
yes.
It's benefit of the doubt, if you will. It's really cool. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
We are obsessed. Like we follow Sterling, like we follow the actors on Insta stories. We watch their lives, like they're behind the scenes. We act like we know them. We're so weird, but we love that show.
That is super funny. Awesome. Well, Katelyn, thank you so much for being on and taking some time out of motherhood to be on with us with the Bearded Tog. But I think everything you said is just going to be really valuable for those new moms and those photographers who are going through family transitions. And,
sure.
I think it's really, really important and valuable. And I think it's something that maybe 2008 Katelyn wish she would have had. And so that's what we're trying to get these out for. So thank you so much, Katelyn.
You are so welcome. Thanks for having me on. It was an honor.
Yeah. I'm so glad you guys got to hear from Katelyn James. And I know we made a joke that she is the Beyonce of wedding photography, but she really is. Like, she's done everything wedding wise, but she's also been an educator. And at the same time, she shared some of her struggles personally and business wise and different mistakes that she either made or surprises, if you will, that those things happen in business all the time. And this podcast can hopefully save all of the listeners from that situation. And if you're curious about money or legality or anything like that, we have other episodes kind of at the beginning of the podcast. Episodes 2 through 4 are about pricing and money. And then episode with Skylar is about just legal mistakes that businesses make. And I think you guys should definitely take a listen to that. So good to hear from Katelyn. She's such a pleasure. Definitely check her out. Everything's in the show notes, all the details. But if you just look for Katelyn James on Instagram, you'll find what you're looking for, as well as the cute photos of Evie, her daughter, her and Michael's daughter. This is so fun. Love her sweetheart, and she's a giver, which is so fun, as you guys heard on the podcast. So thanks so much for her coming out. If you guys haven't yet, please leave a review in iTunes. We would love that. I know some of you have messaged me and said you have. That's super cool. I would love to hear what you think, as well as, you can leave your appropriate star review. Hopefully it's a 5. It just really helps the podcast kind of get into the nitty gritty of the charts, if you will. And we make the top 200 or even sometimes the 100 every week, but it'd be really cool just to get a little bit higher, and you guys can help with that. So thank you so much for listening. Let me know what you guys thought of the episode on Instagram, and have a wonderful day. Thank you guys so much.